sometimes I sound foolish.
I said to the financial pastor, as one of the many was a God experience. Wanted to find God, simply feeling like you're inspired. It isn't always so.
Tell us about the solution.
As one of
People with 18 to 35 years of age, not out of work. Hey, I don't have the skills for this particular problem to solve this particular problem.
None of us talked about the bread salad.
Welcome to the Heart of the Matter. It's our delight today to bring you our guest, our special guest, Mrs. Betty Irabor, she's a woman of many parts. I think one of the most popular ones is that she is the publisher of Africa's, including Nigeria's, foremost fashion magazine called Genevieve. And I know you've seen it on the stalls all over the country. It's a real pleasure to have you on the Heart of the Matter.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Apart from being the publisher of Genevieve, the fashion magazine, lifestyle magazine, she's also recently written a book called Dust to Dew. And I've read the book, and I commend it to you because it'll give you an insight into the subject matter of the book. Dust to Dew. What inspired the writing of this book?
Many years blighted by depression. When I started Genevieve in 2003, my editorial page was called Morning Dew. I have a fascination for mornings. I have a fascination for nature. And through my editorial content, I always talk about morning has broken. Whenever you wake up, it's your morning. So when it was time to write this book, I had several titles in mind, but I kept writing the book, and one day I woke up and I was looking for a metaphor that kind of captured everything I went through. I wanted people to see the dark side of my battle with depression. Then I also wanted them to see hope. And the dusty years were the years of depression, and the years of hallelujah coming out of depression, I decided to title Dew. And so I say to people, I'm in the dew season of my life now, and I've dusted dust.
Having read the book,
Yes.
I understand the dark side, but a lot of people don't understand what depression is. And some people may think that depression is just, I'm going through
a bad day.
I'm having a bad day sort of thing. But it's far deeper than that, and it's something that really will continue unless there is an intervention. Tell us a little bit more about this condition called depression.
I didn't know what it was. I started with bouts of insomnia, which, looking back now, my mom actually suffered from. And I would indulge myself with sleeping pills, not prescribed. I would go into the pharmacy before we had the regulatory body, and I'll buy the Valium, I'll buy the Mogadam, I'll buy the Lexotan, and I'll pop one after the other. And gradually I needed more for better potency. And so I had insomnia for years. And when I got into menopause, it kind of became like a double whammy, double jeopardy. But for the years I suffered insomnia, depression crept in, but it was not caught by doctors. And it was easy for them also.
Was the depression as a result of the insomnia? So
it was insomnia, then depression. Depression, the sleep deprivation triggered off depression, which initially I was managing. But then when I turned 52, I went into menopause. And that also came with insomnia. But by the time I got into menopause, I was already out of sort. I had extreme mood disorder, which is what depression is. Your lows are more than the highs. That is if you're lucky to even have a high. I'll be having dinner with a friend and she'll say some random thing and she probably notice I'm not saying anything back. I bet you're not talking, and the next thing will be streams of tears. So going through depression, it's a lot of hopelessness. You do not see any reason to live. There's nothing to live for. All your achievements mean nothing as you just kind of allow depression to take over your life.
You know, let's go back to insomnia.
Yes.
Because a lot of people might think insomnia is occasionally you don't get enough sleep.
Yes, yeah.
But from reading the book, this could just go on indefinitely for days.
Yes.
You go to bed at night and you don't wake up in the morning. You're already
because you never slept.
Okay. And of course, sleep deprivation is going to affect the human body in many ways. But
you can't focus, you can't concentrate, you can't be creative.
So those years of insomnia, and you know, the doctors will tell you that if you pop pills, you could become addicted to them. So sleep won't even come unless, you know. So those years of insomnia, there may be somebody who's watching right now, and they are beginning to get insomnia. What would you advise them to do?
I did so many things wrong because a doctor would prescribe a certain medication, and I found that I was more perturbed by the idea of not sleeping than not sleeping itself, which later in life I had to unlearn. I didn't give myself time to fall asleep because I had meddled.
Thinking, am I going to sleep
Yes,
today?
I would go to a party with my husband. Then from 7:30, I start getting agitated. I have to go home. Suddenly I have to go home because I have to sleep. So I am all tensed up. Even I remember one particular evening, the band was playing in Lekki, and I was so excited. And he took time coming out. By the time he came out, it was to 9. I said to son, I have to go home. If I don't go home and sleep now, I won't be able to sleep. So he was like, the whole essence is just relax. I couldn't relax. So in my mind, I was so programmed that I needed to get to bed. So I would get to bed, and then I would shut my eyes and be so tensed about it, waiting for sleep to come. And I'll give myself an hour, and I'll go pop a pill. I'll give myself another couple of hours, I'll go pop another pill. But the tension, the fear of not sleeping made the insomnia even worse. So I kept popping pills, and then doctors would say to me, you know, I'll put you on 2 weeks medication. After that, no more. But I had access to that. So I think it was thinking too much about the condition. So it became worse. I was feeding the fear of insomnia. And I think that contributed, because most times I would see a sleep doctor and he would be talking to me about all the sleep hygiene. And in my mind, I'm like, when you're done, let me know.
Can you tell us a bit about the sleep hygiene?
Okay, so the idea of the sleep hygiene is that you go to bed the same time every night.
Okay.
No television in your room. And if you have one, don't watch it in your room. Take a bath, warm bath, just 30 minutes before you go to bed, warm milk, and then do your sleep exercise, count up to 10, tense up, and then relax. Tension and relax. So it's the whole body tensing up and relaxing, which works for someone who just has a few days of no sleep. But in my own condition, my mind was programmed in such a way that I didn't even give those things a chance to work. Immediately I was leaving the doctor, I'm saying to my husband, it won't work. I've had insomnia since I was in my 20s, it's not going to work. So I will go, in 2 weeks, I'll probably have 2 hours sleep. And it was affecting me mentally. So for anyone who is going through that, and it's not something as chronic as mine, observe the sleep hygiene. You know, go to bed at the same time every night. No TV,
yeah.
and then no phone.
And then, you know, because you're married, does that mean both of you have to go to bed at the same time? Because one getting into bed later may wake you up.
The good thing is, every time the doctor spoke to me, he would say to my husband, because we used to love watching TV together in the room, so he would go downstairs. And everybody around me started walking on eggshells, which was another thing that I regretted, because I would go to bed at 8, and then someone would say something like, I'm like, you guys, I'm trying to sleep. And I would switch off everybody's phone. Nobody had any phone in the bedroom. So I would do my sleep hygiene. I would do everything. And then I remember one particular doctor had given me 5 milligrams of a medication. Immediately I got to bed, I just popped 15. I was in a very bad state that I wasn't able to rationalize that increasing the dosage didn't necessarily mean. And then I wake up in the morning not having slept. I remember one particular night, my husband didn't really, he knew what I was going through, but one night was when he actually said, so this is what you're talking about. He went to bed at 10. He woke up at 12. I was seated up. 1 hour later, he woke up. Then at 3 a.m., he woke up and decided he was going to join me. So we sat like that till 6 a.m. And he would say to me, do you want to try now? My eyes had no sleep in them. That was the night it dawned on him that, okay, this isn't as easy as people made it to. Because he also used to think that, just go to sleep, shut your eyes, think of good things, relax and sleep. But then...
Yes, so the initial problem that you were seeing doctors for was insomnia. And you saw a lot of people and they seemed, okay. So what I want to do is we're going to take a short break now. When we come back from the break, we'll be talking about that journey through the various medical professionals till you found the one that knew what to do. So viewers, please stay tuned. We'll be back with Mrs. Betty Irabor in a moment. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're talking with our guest, Betty Irabor, on the subject of depression. She's been to many doctors, more doctors than you probably have had hot dinners. So what was the journey like? Going to doctor after doctor, looking for a solution to this problem of not being able to sleep. And they just didn't understand what was going on.
It was very, very frustrating. It was very harrowing. And I lost faith in the medical sector because I couldn't believe that in 2018, people, doctors, therapists, psychiatrists, didn't understand how to humanize something like depression. And the first doctor I saw was probably very irritated about. The minute I walked in, it's like, are you not that publishing woman? What else do you want? You know, yes, most of us don't get to sleep, you know, and give me the sleep hygiene and everything. And I find that the minute you're sitting beside in front of the doctor, he's prescribed your medication even before you got a chance to explain exactly how you're feeling. And it's like, this should make you sleep. This should make you feel better. 50 milligrams of amitriptyline, and then you go home. Nobody says to you that there's a side effect, that one side of your face is going to be moving, which for somebody who is already depressed. And then your socialization skills are further hindered because every time you sit down, you have spasm because you're on amitriptyline. Nobody tells you the side effects, that some of the medications are going to make you even more mad than you already feel. So in search of hope, in search of an answer, I kept going from one doctor to the other. And it was pretty much the same thing. Lack of empathy, lack of understanding, lack of wanting to sit down to actually understand what you're going through. So for most of the time I saw the doctors, I actually felt I had come to disturb them. And I remember one particular one that said to me, I went back on the follow-up, and it's like, Madam, you have to power up. These things take time. You have to power up. And I looked at myself. I was already feeling like a nobody. I was feeling like a loser. And you are telling me to power up. I'm going to pay you just to tell me to power up. And I lost it. And he says, Madam, I didn't mean it that way. I'm just encouraging you to fight this thing. And at that particular time, I felt it was very inappropriate to use a word like power up. But I think the most humiliating period of my time, of my life, during the crisis was when I went to Yaba Neuropsychiatric Hospital. As a child, we had laughed about people in there. We used to call them crazy, mad. And the reason I went to that place was because if the professor came to me, it would be 50,000 naira per visit. Mm-hmm. If I went, it would be 20,000 naira. So I just felt, let's save some money and I will go there. And there was no help forthcoming. And I realized that people really also judge you for being sick. A young girl told me that on her own also, she decided to go to Yaba Psychiatric Hospital because she was hearing voices. The minute she got there, and she had something like, you're too beautiful to be depressed. How can a fine girl like you be depressed? You're too young. All these children that you have been over-pampered, what do you know about depression? Anyway, she insisted that she wasn't feeling good. They kept her overnight and kept her in the ward with people who had schizophrenia, had bipolar, who had all other kinds. So by morning, she couldn't wait to go. So the total lack of understanding, the total lack of empathy is a thread that runs across the society, individuals, and the medical profession. Because because you're not going to show them a big saw. Mm-hmm. You're not going there to show them a broken arm. It's your mind that is sick. And how do you open your mind to see, I'm really sick? So you go there and you're being judged for even coming to seek help, as if you're just wasting our time. Just go back home, observe the sleep hygiene, here another pill. That was how I went to this doctor who now asked me to start with 40 milligrams of Serosat. But that wasn't really the humbling for me. The hospital was in Louth, and it was a cubicle. And everyone in the reception could hear everything. So while I was at the reception waiting for my turn, I looked at my husband and I said, apart from the celebrity cloak, it just seemed like it was like a rape. It was like I was being stripped bare. So sitting down there and hearing a woman talk about her condition and knowing that I would go in there and everybody will hear my conversation. And I went in there, tried to whisper. But he still didn't get it that everybody deserved some privacy on that. So he was the one that gave me, Madam, 20 milligrams of Serosant. I go home, and 40 milligrams, he said. I go home, I took 40 milligrams. And I had a spasm. I had suicide thoughts. I went really, really crazy about 3 a.m. Woke my husband, and we called the doctor. The first thing he said is that, Madam, do you know what time it is? Do you know what time it is? And my husband said, well, sorry, but this is the lady you saw earlier. And he said, oh, the magazine publisher. My husband said, yes. He said, so what's the problem? He said, she's reacting to the medicine. And he said, how many milligrams did she take? He said, 40. As he said, oh, she should have started on 20 milligrams. She'll be fine. Tomorrow, let us go on 20 milligrams instead of 40. He really didn't feel responsible for the pain and everything I was going through at that time. Imagine someone who's already going through depression, then having an overdose and having all that thought. Immediately, about 2 hours later, I calmed down. But that wasn't the first time I reacted to a medication. There was the other time when it was a pink tablet. Unfortunately, I didn't take it down. My whole system just got confused. And then when we called him, he was he showed empathy. This was around 1 a.m. We had to go and look for glucose, some sugar. But before then, I wanted to take my life. I couldn't understand what was going on. And that was the night I started updating my will.
Okay. Just now you eventually found a doctor that was able to, what happened when you found the doctor that you was able to help you out of this situation?
I had gone to Dubai. I had seen a psychiatrist who said to me, "Madam, all these medications for you alone," because I had taken my medications. I had a whole list. And he separated the medications. That you don't need all this. This one will be fine. Then he showed me empathy. For the first time, I think I was beginning to see a doctor. He also knew I was concerned about my looks. I had wrinkled. I had hyperpigmentation all over my face. And he knew I was worried about that. I didn't want to say it because I felt he would think that of all the things going on in your life, you're worried about your looks. But he said, even this thing will go when you start sleeping and you drink water, exercise. He said, "Madam, be happy," and all that. So back home, my husband wanted me to see one more doctor. And I said, "I'm not seeing any other doctor. Just let me be. If this thing is going to take my life, I'm willing to surrender to it." I felt also that death would be a kind of, it would take away the pain. It would just kind of take care of everything for me. So I wanted to be left in my craziness. I wanted to be left in my episodes of suicidal thought. I wanted to be left alone, just to be under the duvet. Just let me be. So he came home one day and said, "I just listened to a program on radio. Maybe you should see this lady." She said, "Therapist, a psychiatrist." I said, "I am not seeing anymore psychiatrist. I'm done." In the meantime, my dressing table looked like a pharmacy. And I had had it up to there. My family was suffering. It just seemed too much. I didn't want to seek help again. But I said, okay, he is also suffering. His job is suffering. Everybody can't even be happy because mommy is sad. So I said, okay, I'll see this doctor. So I went to see Naya, and then the first thing I noticed was that she was paying so much attention. Mm-hmm. Everything I said, she would reiterate. She would go back to, okay, tell me about that time your dad left. She would go back, okay, what happened when this? So she was with me. She wasn't paying lip service to my condition. She wasn't trying to humor me. She was really with me. And for the first therapy, I was with her for like 4 hours. And I began to wonder that 20,000 naira consultation, is this all you're going to do a day? And she said, "Madam, we're going to, let's just keep going. Don't worry about that." For the first time, I began to think, okay, maybe she's humor. I still thought she was trying to humor me. So then we looked at the medication, and then I told her about the spasm. And she said, "Don't worry about that. Vitamin E will do that." And I felt something as serious and sick as a part of my body moving, which I felt, which was another reason I wasn't socializing. She said vitamin E. So she called the pharmacy downstairs. I got vitamin E. And then after I left her, I still wasn't showing her. I still guarded myself. I didn't want to show her that I felt some relief. So she said, "I'm going to stop all these medications, put you on something new, but only for 3 days." I'm like, no. I panicked. You can't put me on something for 3 days. I always wanted something for 3 years. I always had that fear, that phobia, and everything. 3 days later, nothing worked. And I went back, and she said, okay, 3 more days. So she wasn't giving me medication to last me 1 month and then asking me to power up. She showed genuine interest, and she kept telling me about worse patients, because I didn't think there was a worse patient than mine. So I think, looking back, I think she invented some of those stories. Like, oh, there's this man I've seen, he hasn't slept in 10 years. So I felt better. A month after, I realized that the spasm had gone.
Can I liken depression to, and this is a very strange contrast, to something like Alzheimer's, in the sense that Alzheimer's, there's nothing you do that brings it on. If you've got the conditions, it's going to happen. And,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because a lot of people just think something has to trigger depression, and don't really recognize how deep it can get. Yeah. It's okay because there are lots of conditions that like bipolar.
Yes.
When somebody's bipolar, it can be treated.
You can. I have found someone who was treated for it because in my ignorance as well, I felt it couldn't be treated. The thing with depression is there's so many triggers, and we have to make this clear that having episodes of bad days and using the term loosely, I'm depressed, it still doesn't mean that we should ignore when people say that, because it's a feeling of hopelessness. There are triggers for depression: loss, grief, relationships, abuse, rape. Those can trigger that, which I think with Alzheimer's is a debilitating, degenerating sickness that happens. But then there's the clinical depression, when the mind is thoroughly affected by thoughts and continuous thoughts of hopelessness and sadness, which can sometimes be gradual, or sometimes, like in my own case, it was something that continued to get worse when insomnia wasn't treated. So at a stage, I guess if I had found an answer, a therapy to insomnia, it wouldn't have degenerated. But then came menopause. And one of the things I got from menopause, I didn't get the hot flash, I didn't get the palpitation that people, I just got a double dose of insomnia. So because it was not treated in time, it got worse, and I had all those lineages towards suicide and everything. So there are triggers for insomnia, but also for clinical depression. Sometimes people don't have any visible reasons. People cannot explain what they're going through. I'm just feeling sad. I'm just feeling suicidal. People cannot explain why. Because when I'm speaking to people at book parties, people say to me, so how did you get out of it? People are more interested in how did you get out of it and what triggered it. In my own case, I can say what many people can't tell you why. Many people can't tell. It's like a switch. It's like a mental meltdown. If we look at some of the people recently who had committed suicide, if we look at Anthony Bourdain, and we look at Kate Spade, we look at the cardiologist from South Africa, and then we look at the ordinary person who actually failed. I was speaking to a young girl, and she said, that some of them have to repeat, and some of them fail their exams, and some of them failed in a relationship. Someone had dumped them. So the first thing that comes to mind is suicide. You're not thinking about your achievements, or you're not looking at that this is a temporary setback. All you see is just a failure. All you see is that you will amount to nothing. There is no reason to live. I didn't stop to think that I'm a successful woman. I have so much to be grateful for. Children who are excelling, a career that's going places, a husband that dotes on me. I didn't think of that. But when I was coming out of it, and I would hear that voice, I would say, you lie. I remember one particular time I had this overwhelming voice coming again, and I just started speaking like, no, you lie. I'm a successful woman.